I think we should all be trying something new and just seeing where it takes us.
Welcome to the Passion Behind the Art show. It's all about diving in with individuals to learn the story behind their passion. It's your host, Daryl Penn.
What's up? Guess what? It's another week, another amazing guest, and another opportunity for me to bring you value through someone else's story. But before we jump into this week's episode, I just want to let you know that our Patreon page is up and running, finally. And if you're not familiar with Patreon, it's basically a way to support a specific endeavor that you're interested in. And of course, the endeavor that we're talking about right now is Passion Behind the Art, the podcast. So I'd really appreciate it if you would support the podcast through our Patreon page. All you need to do is just go to passionbehindtheart.com and look for the Patreon tab, and it will take you directly to the page. This would mean the world to me and everything that I'm doing in regards to the podcast. A large percentage of what I do in regards to the podcast, as a matter of fact, all of it is free. And I would really appreciate you if you could just help support the podcast with as low as $2. Nothing too crazy, $2. And of course, there's various tiers you can support with more. And the more you support, the more incentives you get. So just go to passionbehindtheart.com and check out our Patreon page. This would help me out a lot. There will also be a link in the show notes. So without further ado, let's jump into this week's episode. All right. Well, I am excited to have Rob McClurkan, amazing illustrator and even a better dude behind it. Rob, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here tonight.
Yeah, we finally got this to go.
For real. I was afraid tonight was going to be the third time.
It's funny because I just had Amy Hood on not too long ago. I just recorded her episode, and we literally took 2 years to make that happen.
Wow.
Like, she just reminded me, she was like, Daryl, like, this took 2 years to happen. And it wasn't like, it was just scheduling and all of that stuff. So, dude, like, I literally take none of this personal, man. No worries at all. So let's jump right into it. How did Rob's creative journey start?
Oh, man. I started when I was in college. I kind of got exposed to graphic design. I had taken 4 years of art in high school, but I didn't really have an understanding of a career beyond being a cartoonist or, a comic book artist or something. Either that or starving artist. So I thought that those were the two options. And I don't know why it doesn't make any sense that I thought that, I guess. But anyways, graphic design I was exposed to in college and thought, hey, I can kind of do art through graphic design. I mean, that's really what it is, but it's back then there wasn't a lot. I didn't see as much illustration in graphic design as I'm seeing now. Like, that was almost every designer that I've come in contact with lately is like, I'm also an illustrator.
Nice.
Whereas back then it was, you were graphic designers, there was illustrators, and there was photographers.
Gotcha.
And so, anyways, I kind of got into it wanting to kind of do, I guess, similar to what a lot of illustrators or designers are doing now, bringing a lot of illustration into their own design work. And so anyways, that's how I got my start, was just in college. Went 4 years, graduated, and got my first design job down here in Atlanta.
Okay, nice. It's funny you say that because, like, almost everyone, including me, we were into cartoons, we were into that stuff, but for some reason, graphic design wasn't, I don't know what it is, but graphic design did not stand out. It did not stand out at all. I don't know what the reason is for that.
Yeah, I don't either. Nobody said, hey, here's a career you can do with art at all. And actually, I had no idea what graphic design was.
It's true, man. It's so true. It's so true. That's like repeating. I'm not sure how it is now, but like at least 10, 12, 14, 15, 20 years ago. It's just like no one, you just didn't see graphic design as a viable option. You just didn't see it as an option at all. It was either you're going to be a cartoonist, a regular artist, or some kind of engineer or architect, something around that sort.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's just strange. But I'm hoping it's different now.
I kind of got a feeling it is. I remember my first classes I was taking were production for the graphic designer. So it was a lot of paste up, a lot of Amberlith and Rubylith for old time. I don't know if they still do that anymore, but I mean, if they still teach that. But anyways, it was a lot of that production. We would go do a lot of, and we'd go to a lot of service bureaus for field trips, you know, and that was kind of where they're making the film and all that. And I would go up to my professor and I'd go, is this what I'm going to be doing? And she'd go, no, you're not going to be doing this. And I go, good, because I don't want to do this. And so we'd go to the next field trip and I go, is this what we're going to be doing? She'd go, no, okay, good, because I don't want to do this. I want to like design stuff. I do not want to be doing this.
I feel you. So, all right, so you leave school, you get your first graphic design job. Like, was illustration like a big deal for you from the beginning? Like, when did the transition for illustration come about?
It did. I really wanted to be, early on, I wanted to be an illustrator. I got out of school, and I had actually done my senior thesis project with a lot of illustration. And I did like some stamps and some stamp designs with illustration. And it was really cool. I actually saw students this past week at Creative South who did stamps as well. And I was like, I kind of had a real connection with that project. Anyways, so yes, I did. And when I got out of school, I actually had a couple of meetings with some agents. But those didn't really go well. Like, I really didn't have an illustration portfolio. I had built a design portfolio.
Gotcha.
And both of them were kind of like, you got a lot more work to do before we would even take you on. I'm not even sure they could see much potential. I know one of them was kind of like, look, I don't have time in my career to take somebody under my wing and groom them.
Gotcha.
So I kind of gave up on that a little bit. I just kind of hunkered down and just did design and thought, you know, I'll do illustration here and there when the project calls for it.
Gotcha. So, like, when did like this full blown shift from doing graphic design to illustration come about?
I had a job at a nonprofit, and when they hired me, they had 2 children's magazines, and they gave me one of them. So I was the art director for the magazine. I got to hire illustrators, but I would also just pull one little illustration for me to do.
Gotcha.
And so it was really cool because I could connect with other illustrators and talk with them and kind of learn about the business. And then on the other hand, I'm sitting here kind of figuring out my style.
Gotcha.
So I was trying everything. I was throwing all different types of stuff, and I was doing a little bit of digital, doing watercolor and pen and ink and with watercolor washes and just trying different things, some gouache here and there. But eventually I landed on digital. I also, during that time, the web was really brand new. And where I particularly worked, I was kind of like, look, this internet looks absolutely ugly and it needs a graphic designer. I mean, graphic designers need to be messing with the web, you know? And they were like, you're never going to do that.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't like that answer because I was like, you're obviously not seeing the big picture here. The internet really needs some help because I mean, I don't know if you remember websites.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, there were some good ones, but most of them were not. And so I went home at night and started messing with, I think it was Adobe PageMail back then or something.
Wow.
I didn't know any HTML. I kind of learned just enough to become dangerous. And I started building a website. I was like, if I'm going to build a website, what do I want to do? And so I said, I'll do a webcomic. So I built a website around this webcomic, and I did the comic for 5 years. But during that time, it was allowing me to start drawing more because from the time I graduated to this job, I had kind of quit drawing. So I didn't keep a daily sketchbook or anything like that. So I kind of got rusty.
Wow.
And and where that blank page was really intimidating. So, I mean, like, if I could pull up some stuff, it looked horrible. I mean, the stuff I was doing was really, 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 really bad. But I mean, it was making me draw again.
Gotcha.
So those two things were kind of what started building this whole thing of illustration again in me. And so I did the comic for 5 years. And at some point, my kids were very small at the time, and I was staying up really late at night working on the comic, and it was back before Facebook and social media. So I had like an audience of maybe I could get 30 people to look at it when it would come out every week. And so I realized, I was like, what am I doing this for? Who's getting anything out of this besides just me? Because I enjoyed doing it. And I realized that I needed to try something different because, I mean, I have little kids. If I'm going to put this kind of time into something, I would like to see some revenue from it.
Right.
And doing an online comic strip for me wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of when I started thinking, well, okay, let me back up. So at that point, I had switched jobs, and that nonprofit was still throwing me some illustration work.
Oh, okay.
I had created a character that appeared in the magazine every month. And so they were like, hey, we want you to keep doing this. So one weekend they had given me, obviously, the character illustration to do, but then they gave me a couple other little illustrations to work on in the magazine.
Okay.
And I was like, when I got done, I was like, that's 1 week's salary. All that I worked on is 1 week's salary. If I got that 4 times a month, I would be making the same amount of money I'm making now. Now, here's the problem with that. I wasn't thinking about taxes or anything like that, so, but still, the idea is there. If I thought if I could get more clients that would pay, I mean, I've got a month's worth of salary.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I kind of decided to put the comic on hiatus for about 10 years now and totally focus on just illustration.
Gotcha.
But what's really awesome about doing that comic strip was that I was writing, and which has transitioned into eventually me doing children's books. And I actually do a comic now for a kids magazine. It's a 5-page comic, and I actually write that comic. They usually kind of, here's the idea that we want to get across, here's the theme for this month or whatever, and then I get to write the comic.
Wow.
So it all came full circle.
But the crazy part is, like, you were ahead of the game, because if you were to do that comic strip now, that thing would absurd, like, especially now that you've, like, your skills are through the roof now. If you were to do that comic strip right now, that would be crazy.
Man, I would love. I still would love to do it. Yeah, I'll tell you what it was called: The Bottle Rocket Chronicles.
Okay.
It was about a superhero named Bottle Rocket. It became out before Pixar, before The Incredibles. So let me. I want to say this, but he was a dad, but his kids were not. His family was not superpowered. He was the only one with superpowers. And it basically was a whole thing about being a dad and how you want to be the hero to your family. It's really the whole underlying concept. But yeah, I really loved doing that. And I did one comic one time. I knew a guy who was doing an online comic at the time who worked for Pixar. And I made a joke once The Incredibles came out. I did a strip about The Incredibles, and I sent it to him. And my claim to fame at that time was I had like a bunch of hits from Pixar. So I thought I was like so cool. I was like, check this out, man! All these people from Pixar saw my comic today. It didn't turn into anything, but still.
Like, dude, cool. Like I'm like, just the fact that you said that, like, with social media now and the ability to share stuff now.
Yeah.
Like, I know your schedule and everything is like completely different, but like something like that, like, I know it would like do so much better now.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would. Even if it wasn't awesome and great,
right?
It would do way better than just 30 views a week.
So, all right. So you did this magazine for this nonprofit, and it kind of exploded, for lack of a better word, your illustration career, and got you realize, okay, this is 1 week's salary to do, I guess, this part or this character, whatever the case may be. Like, where did it go from there? How did you start getting clients in regards to that? How did you get this children's book, your first children's book?
Well, the what I started doing was, because I had a full-time job and I was getting that freelance work, I started like socking that freelance money away I kind of had a big picture. My big picture was to actually go out on my own.
Gotcha.
So I started like taking that money and either putting it away, trying to pay stuff off, frantically trying to pay stuff off. And then third, I was using it for marketing. So I would, back then they had these big books. They still have them now, like the Workbook and like Directory of Illustration.
Gotcha.
And back then, I mean, those, I can't remember what it cost to be in those magazines. It was really expensive in those books. It was about like, I mean, it might have been close to $3,000 to be in one of those books.
Whoa.
But you would get work. Back in the day, you would get work.
Gotcha.
So if you invested in it, you would get, and so so 1 year I bought ads in I think in one of those books, and I literally started getting a lot of advertising agency stuff.
Wow.
Which was awesome. And then I also did postcards. So I would send those out to anywhere I could find a mailing list. And actually the Workbook has a website called workbook.com. You can still use that. They actually still come out with books too. But workbook.com, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to have where you would pay a little extra, and they had a directory of people that you could send postcards to. So I had like all these lists of names from publishers and toy companies and all that. Anything that whoever they would send their book to, I kind of had access to that. And so I would make postcards and start sending them out. Wow. And eventually it took about, I guess maybe 6 months, but I started, things started trickling in. I would get like an education publisher would contact me and want me to do some work for them. And so over time, it just started building up momentum.
Wow. That's cool. I didn't even know something like that exists.
Yeah, they do have, I don't know if the Workbook still offers that, but there are mailing lists that designers, photographers, illustrators can purchase to reach out to, especially freelancers can reach out, find these ad agencies and publishers and all that.
Okay. So was it through that you got your first children's book?
That came through my agent. I was, illustrators generally will find an agent, not every one of them, but I started out fairly independent. I had an agent out in California that would get some work for me, but mostly I was getting my own stuff. She would get me something every once in a while. So eventually we just parted ways, and I found another agency who I'm with now, which is Bright. And they have what attracted me to them was that they're heavy into publishing, which is what I wanted to get into. But they're also literary agents.
Gotcha.
So that means you can write a book, send it to them, and hopefully get that, start working with them to maybe get that published. But then there's also the opportunity, because they have so many contacts and connections in publishing, that I could get a book deal for just illustrating the book. So that's really how the book came about.
Okay.
Was through an agent. Sometimes I know people that are doing it without agents. My experience has been with picture books. It seems to be a lot easier if you have an agent.
Gotcha. So how did you go about, what's the process of getting an agent? How did that go about? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I kind of went through mine a little unconventionally, but most of the time, if you go, there's an organization called SCBWI, which stands for the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators.
Gotcha.
If you end up going to one of their meetings, they have chapters. Every state has a chapter. And then they also have a big meeting in New York in the winter and in LA in the summer. So basically there might be an agent there that you can talk to. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you need to go on their website and just kind of follow the directions of how to submit your work to them. And it takes about probably 6 weeks. They'll look over your stuff, get in contact, that kind of thing. For me, I mean, back then, I would just find their names and I start emailing them. Hey, check out my portfolio. And that's just is what I did. I was just emailing all the time, and I got a lot of rejections. And that's sort of part of it. You do get a lot of rejections.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, at least I get it. It still makes sense. So, would you say like getting an agent is beneficial, or like what's your thoughts on it?
Getting an agent, if you're just wanting to do illustration,
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think you need an agent. But if you want to get into the picture book publishing where there's royalties and all that,
Gotcha.
that's a lot more helpful, especially because, like my agent has an office in New York. So I know that they're meeting constantly with publishers and they're going to visit them, all that kind of stuff. So it helps build that relationship
Gotcha.
that they have with them. So I kind of think so. I think if you're wanting to, work in editorial and stuff, certainly an agent, there's nothing wrong with having an agent at any level. Some of them probably work more with advertising agencies and those kind of things. So I'm sure that there's jobs that I've missed out on in my career because my agent doesn't really go after advertising agencies and stuff, but I'm okay with that.
Gotcha.
So I really think if you're starting out, I would think it'd be better to start out unagented, build up some experience and build up some relationship with clients. That way, when you go to talk to an agent, you have some leveraging ability. You have some leveraging power, so that you can say, hey, I've got these house clients. So if you take me on and I've got, you bring me new clients, and obviously you're going to take your percentage, but here's some people that I've been working with for a while and I want to keep them as my house clients. And that would be really good. Plus, I think just the experience, I think a lot of illustrators, and I was this way, we kind of get super excited, like there's some validation in having an agent. Like I can walk around and say, I was talking to my agent, and that's sort of this, I don't know. But I kind of, now that I'm older, I see that you don't need that validation. What the validating is, are you working? Are you making money on your illustrations? That's validation. Having an agent, so if you're a little older, a little more experienced, I think it just kind of is a different mindset.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense there?
Yeah, definitely. It's super. It's just an interesting world. So I was glad you was able to share about that because I'm not too familiar with that arena. So did you catch Jessica Hitch's talk?
Oh,
Creative
yeah.
South.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Creative South. It's just that whole picture book, deal and all of that stuff, and hearing what you have to say. It's kind of intriguing to me. I'm very interested in that arena because if I was ever to do like a book, it would be more in that arena. I'm not sure I would write like a full-fledged book.
Right. Yeah, her speech was great. And actually what I really loved about what she said, one of the things she said was that writing didn't come easy for her. And so it took her a while to write the book. And I was so glad to hear that because that's me too. Books usually take a long time for me to write. I'm not just cranking them out. So there's some people that can do that. That's not me. So it's nice to hear somebody that's as established as she is and that I can relate to like that.
And then that small little nugget that you dropped, how to become a New York Times bestseller. I was like, that's very intriguing. Do you remember that?
You know what? I don't, but please tell me. I want to know.
Because she was like it's the pre-orders. It's not the, she was like, it was a pre-orders. You got to rack up as much pre-orders that when it goes live, all of those pre-orders that you rack up, it will seem like you got all those orders that day when it goes live.
That was a good nugget, and I took note of that. But it's funny because I do follow a lot of children's illustrators, and usually when our books do come available, we all like, hey, pre-order my book came out, just came out, or like you can pre-order my book today, starting today. So everybody tries to push it, definitely. Yeah.
So it's just like intriguing to me, like the importance is the pre-order, because like especially if New York Times is New York Times bestseller is something that you want to have.
Sure.
So it was just kind of intriguing. I think she said it's 200,000. It's a lot of books.
Yeah, that's an amazing amount of books, dude. That's an amazing amount.
To like, I think it's either the 200,000 the first week or something like that. Sheesh. To make the New York Times bestseller, something around that arena. That's a lot of books, though.
That's a lot. I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. If I had a book and I started, hey, pre-order it today, and I bang that gong every day for 6 weeks, I wouldn't come close.
But it's good to know the numbers and what the actual percentage and what the actual numbers are to actually do these things. You know what I mean?
Actually, I bet you there's a magazine called Publishers Weekly that comes out weekly, and it has a list on there of all the books, like bestsellers, in children's and fantasy and all the different genres. And it seems to me if you sold about, I mean, it's been a while since I've looked at it, but I think if you sold anywhere from between 4,000 and 5,000, that you'd probably be on that top 20 list. Like,
is that like the first week or something like that, right? Or,
well, every week, yeah, whatever week.
Yeah.
It's per week, so yeah.
Interesting. I really want to learn about that because I know there's a science to it.
You mean about the selling of them, or
the selling of them and hitting the New York Times best-selling list? I know there's a science to it because, like, these more popular people, I know they know what the numbers are to be able to hit it. I know they know. They got to know.
Well, if they're popular too, they have a nice audience, which helps too.
Exactly.
I mean, there was a huge line to get her book signed at Creative South.
Yep. Makes sense. So, what would you say was the hardest struggle that you had to overcome?
Wow. You asked me this question earlier, and I should have thought a little bit more about it. It's I really early on in my career, I did struggle in the workforce, like actually being out in the. I just had a couple of jobs that I wasn't a good fit for, I think. Maybe I just didn't fit the culture of the company very well and stuff. So my self-confidence really hit rock bottom.
Wow.
And kind of wondered if I just totally missed the mark on what I was supposed to do. And so it took once I got that job at that nonprofit, it was a perfect fit for me. And I think it was a little more laid back, and which is a little more how I work. I'm not really super intense, I don't think. And so it just fit me a lot better. And it took about 6.5 years for me to feel like, you know what, I'm better. I can move on. Like I was embarrassed. I mean, one job I got fired from, another one I came like just squeaking by almost. And I mean, both of those just tore me up. So it took a long time before I could tell anybody that story because I was just so embarrassed by it. But I think all things happen for a reason, and it was really good. I'm grateful, because I can't believe now that I'm actually sitting here doing illustration, and which is a great fit for me. And actually, I was, at the conference, Rocky Rourke shared some stuff and talked about being fired, I think, once or twice. And so I went up to him afterwards and we were talking about that. And he said that he had been embarrassed about it. And somebody said to him, dude, I don't want to quote him wrong, but basically you weren't made for those jobs. You were made to be a freelancer. This is what you were made to do, not that. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, I think that's probably true. I think that I was made to do this, and those others were just not a good fit for me.
I feel you. Yeah, that's rough. But I'm glad you were able. 6 years. Wow. That's a long time to be in a rut.
Dude, I mean, I wouldn't say I was in a rut. I just think it took, I wasn't like down in the dumps for 6 years. It just took 6 years to get to a point where I was ready to move on and take another chance.
Gotcha.
Because I really, for me, I was embarrassed, and I really had nothing to be embarrassed about. Mm-hmm. But it was, and I took it probably way more personal than I should have.
Gotcha.
But so it just took a while.
Gotcha. So who were those people that, currently and even back then that kind of is in your support system? Those people that kind of gave Rob the energy, believed in Rob?
Well, definitely my wife. She pushed me to, when I was talking about going freelance. Matter of fact, I remember that particular weekend that I sat down and did that big job where I said that was a week's salary. If I only had 4 more of those, she was like, that's what I've been telling you. You need to keep doing this. And so she definitely encouraged that. But funny thing is, the day that I quit my job, and now I'm totally freelance, it was a weekend, and I'm sitting in the living room, the den, whatever it is, and she started panicking, and she goes, I think you need to go get a job. And I'm like, you just told me to quit, and now you're telling me, what are you doing to me? So that was a freak out moment for both of us. And then I would say my good buddy, Tom Cox, who you had on the show, and me and him Skype all the time, and over the years has been obviously a great support. Me and him worked together right when he went out to go freelance.
Gotcha.
Then about 3 years later, I went out, and so we worked together. He worked with me on a contract basis because I stayed at the company where we were working, and so we worked together those 3 years. And then, but when he went out on his own, I was like, that's really what I want to do. And so it took me a little longer. Well, actually, he'd been working on it. So he left, and I left, and I learned a lot from him, just things that you don't think about, like you need an accountant, all those different things, and kind of learned and watched him and his business, and kind of helped me build mine.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Tom is awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a perfect segue. So as you talk about Tom Cox, I know you guys started Small Town Creatives. You guys went on a little break, and you guys have relaunched. Let's talk a little bit about that, what Small Town Creative is, and what's the direction of the new Small Town Creatives.
Yeah, Small Town Creatives was basically an answer to people that live up in our area. We didn't realize how many creatives there were living here in the North Georgia, Cherokee County area. And because for a long time we thought we were the only two, and that's just because when I moved to Woodstock, it was a really small town. And so he was the only other graphic designer that I knew. And I don't know what it was, but somehow, actually it might have been because Vaughn mentioned Tom at the How Conference, and that was in Atlanta. And some people started reaching out to Tom and said, I didn't realize you live so close. Can we get some coffee sometime? And then, or lunch. And so he and I started talking. I was like, wow, there's a lot of people here. Why don't we do something to where we can get everybody together at once? And that's really where it was born. We would just meet on a Friday morning, have some coffee and donuts, and just meet people and talk. And then as it grew, we started thinking, well, what if we added speakers? And then from there, we were like, well, what if we did it at nighttime instead of daytime? Maybe we would get a different audience. So maybe that audience would carry over and come at night. We would even be bigger. And some of those were not able to make the transition just because of family responsibilities, but we did build a bigger audience, and we were able to have speakers come in. But that was an every month event, and it was just me and Tom doing it. And so that became really a little too difficult to do. And, when you're trying to run your own business, you start going, something's got to give. And right. Small Town Creatives is what gave. So we were talking earlier this year about what we wanted to do. And I was like, you know what, if we can make this event quarterly. We had some interest in the city of Woodstock. I don't want to get this wrong. This is Woodstock. Said, hey, yeah, we like what you guys are doing. We want to help you out. So they kind of partnered with us because our vision is to do a quarterly event and be bringing in speakers that people from Atlanta would drive to Woodstock to come here.
Gotcha.
That's our whole plan. It's been a little bit hard getting it started back just because there's still some responsibilities that both Tom and I have that have carried over that we weren't quite. It's not quite where it needs to be just yet, but we're working toward getting that to where we can definitely do it on a quarterly basis. And hopefully be able to reach out to some awesome speakers.
Nice. Well, I caught the first one for the relaunch, and I thought it was awesome. So
Yeah,
I think you guys are on the right track.
Yeah. And because we were able to partner with Elm Street and put it there in a real auditorium, I think that helped as well. It just made it seem a lot more official. And you've got big screens already in place. You've got the sound system, all of that, which is stuff that we definitely needed. And those were all challenges we had early on because we didn't have microphones, we didn't have a projector, and we weren't charging at the time to come to our event. So we're like, are we gonna fork out our own money, which we did do a lot of early on, was to buy things that we need.
Right.
And so Elm Street has all that stuff, which is fantastic. And we did start charging a minimal fee, but what we wanted to do with Woodstock is say, look, we're asking you guys for some money to help us get this thing going. And in return, you'll get some of that money back through ticket sales. But as we are able to ramp this up and get better speakers, we're hoping that will just make more of an incentive for Woodstock to stay involved.
Right. Which is super cool. And plus, it's kind of like we all just came from Creative South. Can you imagine how much Creative South helps Columbus every year annually?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely. I mean, and I see the same thing for small town creatives. Maybe not on that scale, but right. Every time people are coming in and spending money, it's always a good thing for the city.
Right. When we relaunched, we did a bunch of videos about Woodstock because we were like, come early, get a bite to eat. There's a lot to do in Woodstock, a lot of cool things to do, a lot of good places to eat. So that's definitely was on our radar. We would love to kind of help the businesses of Woodstock as well.
Right. And I mean, through Tom, he's done so much for the city. That's promotion in itself, is design work. That's promotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's promotion in itself. Inadvertently, he's promoting Woodstock every time he shows something that he's done for Woodstock. So it's just
right.
Yeah, but I guess, it will all work out. I think you guys are on the right track. I like what you're doing, as I said before.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump into some questions, some different type of questions. What is that thing you can't live without that's not your phone?
It's not my phone. Well, what I can't live without, as far as on a professional level, is my Cintiq. It's are you familiar with Cintiq?
Yes.
So I bought mine's 12 years old and it is still kicking. It is still kicking. I'm part of me wants it to die. I want to get a new one, but no, I mean, it's awesome. I love it. It's but anyways, I've had it for 12 years. And when I first bought it, it sat on my desk for a year. Maybe that's why it's still kicking, because I didn't know I bought it and then I was I was working really a lot in Illustrator at the time, and I'm so used to using the Intuos Wacom tablet with that transitioning was too difficult to use Illustrator with it. But over that year, I started doing a lot more work in Photoshop, and then that transition just was totally complete once I really kind of started making that move. And so now I use it. I use it every day. If something happened to this bad boy, I'd be calling B&H, man, send it today.
Oh, that's funny. That's cool. I like that. So, book recommendations.
Okay, book recommendations. Well, since I'm a children's illustrator, I'm going to give you my top 5 children's books.
Nice.
My favorites. Now, I know there's a lot of them that there's a lot of different kind of children's books, but my favorites are the ones that are funny. I love funny children's books, and so these are. Let me get this here so I can show them to you at the same time. This one is called The Watermelon Seed by Greg.
Okay.
Pizzoli. I'm hoping I'm saying his name right, but this is a brilliant book. It is so funny. This is these are the books you should read to your kids at night, in my opinion. Really funny book. I love this one.
All right, The Watermelon Seed.
Watermelon Seed. And the whole concept is, this alligator eats a watermelon seed, and he's worried that it's growing in his stomach. The whole thing. We've all wondered.
I love it already.
Yeah, a little shameless plug here. I'm going to have to say On Nuts. This was my first illustrated book that I wrote.
Oh, nice. Yes.
But I will say that it's a really fun read aloud. I love reading this. I've gone to schools reading this and stuff, but it's just fun because kids have a lot of interaction when they read it. And I even had parents send me videos of their kids saying, "Oh, nuts!"
Oh,
so
nice.
it's really cool. Then this was actually, I just recently bought this one, and I really love this. It's called Sleepy the Goodnight Buddy.
Okay, cool.
And I just love this book. It's really funny. Not only that, I love Scott Campbell's art, but and Drew DeWalt, like he wrote The Day the Crayons Quit.
Okay.
And a couple other ones. So you just got to get this. This is a funny book. It's an awesome book. Now this one, I love this. I laughed so hard when I read this book in the store that I had to buy it. No, that I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it. I'm so glad I didn't, because then I actually met the author illustrator, and he actually drew me a picture. I'll show you. But it's Unicorn Thinks He's So Great.
One of my daughters would love that, just because it says unicorn on it.
Yeah. It's so good. And look, I'll show you. And Bob Shay is a great guy, and he's really super funny. But anyways, he signed this for me, and he drew a big giant unicorn.
Wow, that's so epic.
Yeah, man, it's one of my prized possessions. I think every illustrator should draw in their books. And then this is another one by Scott Campbell. Scott illustrated the Sleepy, the Goodnight Buddy. But Hug Machine is...
Nice.
Let me just turn this off. The Hug Machine is absolutely brilliant. It's so funny. I mean, this is the kind of book I want to write. This is just really funny stuff. All these books are humorous. That's what I like to do. Is I like to laugh, and all these children's books are just, that's what they do. I mean, the great thing about children's books, you have, ones that are serious, ones that are thought provoking, and I've got some of those too because they're just amazing. My wife just read last night the Tomorrow I Will Be Brave, and she was like, "This is so amazing." So, but the funny ones make me laugh the most. The funny ones make me happiest, because that's the kind of book I want to write.
Gotcha.
But then I've got one more. This is just for the adults in your life. It's called Orbiting the Giant Hairball by Gordon McKenzie. And I don't know if you've ever read it. Just making sure I said his name right. It's been a while since I've read this book, but it is one of my favorites. Yep. He used to work at Hallmark. But this book, was designed by a design firm, and they sent me a copy, but because the version that anybody would buy off Amazon does not look like this. This is a really unique copy, but it's a great book for creatives. Nice. Orbiting the Giant Hairball, totally recommended. He used to work at Hallmark. I think I may have said that, but really funny, thought-provoking, great book.
Nice. I love it, man. You had some nice collections. I love the touch with the children's book. I'm really digging that. Really digging that. So what's the first hour of Rob's day like?
I would say no day looks the same.
Okay.
But if I could, my perfect day would be this. As soon as I get down to my office, I immediately start working, because if I don't, I run the chance of not being able to focus.
Gotcha.
Okay. So actually, I have this. I belong to this website called Lumosity, which is all about brain exercises. There's like puzzles, and it's like they give you 5 games a day to do. They don't take that long. Mm-hmm. And that's one way I kind of get my day started. I don't drink coffee, so it's kind of waking you up a little bit.
Gotcha.
I think. And so I like to play those, and then I like to go ahead and jump in on whatever it is I'm working on in the day, because as the day goes on, you're bound to get distracted. And my wife being a teacher, she not every day, but some days she might get home rather early. And then, we've got to start thinking about dinner and all that kind of stuff. So it's really about jumping in as soon as possible and just trying to focus.
I love it, man. I love it. So as we are getting ready to close, what advice... well, before we get into that, what's next? What's next for Rob? What's some of the stuff that you got going on? What's next for Rob?
I'm working on another book that I've written.
Nice.
I've got the dummy book already, which a dummy is basically what I've done is created a PDF book that has the words and the pictures, just loose sketches, nothing super tight. I actually do have one color spread, and then I do have a character drawing where I've kind of done a little side view and a front view of the character. But I've been working on that for a couple years, and I've kind of been reworking it, and I'm really, really close to I think we're really close to pitching it. My agent just sent it back to me, had a few little tweaks, and then we'll start seeing what happens with it. So I'm fingers crossed.
So my question is, so when you pitch it, do you pitch it like not completely done?
The story is written and the sketches are there, but it's not a full color picture book. You don't want to do that. You don't want to go into that much work, because then what happens is an art director or an editor or whoever's looking at the book is going to be like, I really feel bad. I'm totally rejecting this whole thing. And he's done so much work.
Got it.
And they also see it more as a complete piece. But when you send it as a dummy book or a manuscript, they realize that I don't know if they realize this, but I can think this might be the philosophy behind it, is they realize it might need some tweaking, and you're open to that, but if you've done all this heavy lifting already and they're looking at this complete book, they're going to feel bad saying, well, really, we need to change this, and this character, not really crazy how the character looks. Can you redo that? Because you've just done all this work. Got it.
Makes sense. So what advice would you have for creatives out there?
Just creatives in general, or?
Your call. But
okay. I would say, stay curious. This past week, being at Creative South, I was able to help out with the portfolio reviews of students, which was humbling and so neat, because the reason I say it was humbling is they were doing stuff that I would have never dreamed of doing when I was in college. I mean,
wow.
There's some stuff with augmented reality. I was like, what in the world? I mean, it's like this illustration thing's got to work out, because I don't know what I'm doing. So, I mean, but just really incredible work. And one of the things I saw was some students that were kind of trying a bunch of different things, and not just kind of resting here, but like, I want to try this, and I want to try this. We're just so curious. And I think there just seems to be a lot of things opening up with all different kind of software that I think we should all be trying something new and just seeing where it takes us.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Be curious. Try something new.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome, Rob. This has been so awesome. Where can people go to find you and learn more about you?
My website is crobdraw.com, and that's SEE robdraw.com, and Instagram and Twitter are at @RMcClurkan.
Nice and simple. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, dude. It's been a long time coming, but it was well worth it, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. So much fun.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope it's been super valuable to you, and you're now ready to take your audience building, your community growing to the next level, to help you and help me build our empire, for lack of a better word, or just to build our thing. Remember to stop by iTunes, Passion Behind the Art, and leave a review and subscribe. It's very important to me. It helps the podcast grow, and it makes me feel good to kind of hear from you guys, to know what you like about this podcast, what it's done for you. So jump on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. Passion Behind the Art. Be blessed.